Learn how to remove unwanted spaces from the beginning and end of user input. In this lesson, we want to look at how you can remove extra spaces from user input. Don't forget that we have actually added a conditional check to our application code in order to prevent entering an empty task inside the input field and added it to our task list. But what if I enter a space and I click on add task? What do you think will happen? Well, you can see that we are back to that issue again. By just entering a space, I press the space keypad on my keyboard and I click on the add task, and it added that empty input again to my task list. So we now want to look at a way to prevent these extra spaces from our user input, because this helps us to keep our to-do list app clean and prevent users from adding tasks that contain only spaces. So that's the purpose of why we need to remove extra spaces from our user input. Now, this user input, sometimes it might be something that is accidentally typed. Maybe someone is trying to do something and then they mistakenly hit the space bar and they click on add task, and their expectation normally would be that this should not work. But if they now eventually discover that what they entered is actually showing as part of the list of their tasks, they will be wondering, and they might be caught unaware, because it will look strange to them. So in order to prevent all this kind of default behavior, we want to look at how we can actually make use of the trim method in JavaScript to remove extra spaces from user input. And this trim method is not something that we are going to create a bunch of code to achieve. It's just a method code that we need to add to what we already have as existing part of our input sanitation that we have been doing. So in order to use the trim method, just come over to where the input field is capturing whatever value that is entered into it, which is this task input.value property. Then call on that trim method and say .trim. Because it's a method, you need this opening and closing brackets after it. And now you can see that my page has been refreshed. So let me go ahead, enter space bar on my keyboard again, and then click on, I think it did it in the wrong place. Okay, so I will enter the space bar again on my keyboard. I'll click on add task. Now something is actually wrong with our code, because it is not supposed to be showing this. So let me just refresh. Let me try again. And now this is working. So there was a glitch. So I was supposed to, the refresh didn't happen automatically. So when I did it manually, it corrected itself to behave in the normal way. So you can see it. You can see that my input box is being highlighted. And if I enter space, you should see that this cursor should move to the front. Now you can see it. Now let's click on add task. Nothing is happening because we have successfully prevented how to add extra spaces into our user input. Now with this that we now have in place, you can see that our to-do application is getting smarter. And if you look at it from the beginning, instead of using the input exactly as the user type it, we first clean it up by using the trim method. So this remove unnecessary spaces from the beginning and end of the text. So what does that mean? Let's say I put space like this and I enter a text, add a task. And after it, I put a lot of space again. If I click on add task alone is what is going to show. You can see that the trailing spaces at the beginning and at the end of that input content has been removed automatically. And that is due to this trim method that we have just added to how the input box is capturing input from our users. So it also helps our validation, because If a user types only spaces, trim method turns them into an empty string, allowing our if statement to stop the task from being added. So this also enhances the functionality of the conditional statement that we have added to check if an empty spaces or an empty content is entered into our input box. So this way, we can safely remove extra spaces and make our user input sanitized before it is being added onto the listing on our web page. So you can see clearly that now if you try to enter an empty task, it will not work. And if you try to add extra spaces as well, it will not work. So this is making our to-do list app better, sanitized, improving the UI and also making it more reliable, as we know that proper validation are being built into this application to work the way it should work. So moving on, let's look at few key takeaways from this lesson. Number one, the trim method removes spaces from the beginning and end of a string. Number two, cleaning user input is a common practice in web development. So this is also something that is applicable to when you are working with forms in web development. You want to sanitize every input that a user enters into your form in order to prevent malicious attempt or malicious access into your application. So it's a very common practice that you see a lot in web development. Number three, the trim method works well with our existing validation. You can see that our trim method enhances and help our existing validation, and it did not obstruct it or prevent it from working in any way. And lastly, users can no longer add tasks that contain only spaces. So users can now no longer add tasks that contain only spaces. So if their input is not sanitized, that is, if their input is not correct or the expected thing, then the system will just wave it away and will not even bother to add it to our application. And so this is a very important key aspect in doing our integrity test for our application, as it prevents extra spaces as well as an empty input from being added to our task list.